Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Richest Men in Town podcast. I'm Mike Freeman, and along with my good friend and co-host Tyler Gould, we're excited to welcome you to our little podcast project. Tyler and I are just a couple of middle-aged husbands and dads driven to live our best lives. We want to be better every day, so here we'll be sitting down with great people. Not famous people, but great people that we admire, to learn their secret to living the rich life. Probably not the rich life you're thinking of. Our guests come in humbled and surprised at the invitation and hopefully leave feeling proud and grateful, realizing just how good they really have it. So pull up a chair, stay a while, and raise a glass with us as we toast our guests to the richest men in town.
Yeah, man, I'm looking forward to Wes and kind of getting his take on goals. You know, I'll be honest with you, Mike. I'm not a huge like New Year's resolution kind of guy, because what I don't like about New Year's resolutions is the desperation attached to it, right? Like, okay, last year was a waste of time and I blew it in all these categories. So this year I'm going to be better. So, I mean, I like the idea of people being inspired to kind of, but my goal for myself personally is I don't want to be at a place, and I'm always at this place anyway, but I try not to be that, hey, I've got to set this goal because if I don't, there's dire consequences attached to it, right? Like I better have a New Year's resolution because last year, boy, I didn't do any of that stuff.
Yeah, no, I think it's about renewal. It's about the spirit of richest men in town, right? And the work that we do with our guests and reflecting, because whether you like it or not, 2021 chapter in your life, it ends tonight, brother, right? Like, you know, and so by the time our listeners hear our time together today, hanging out with Wes, you know, 2022 is rolling.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's like, it's about that reflection. It is about, you know, asking yourself some questions. I love the idea of like, okay, where's the struggle? And having the courage to turn into that struggle.
Oh,
right?
For sure. I think that's a lesson that Alan, Michael, and a lot of our guests have talked about. But yeah, I totally agree with that. I think
like turn to it and look at it and say, okay, I'm gonna do a little autopsy, not paralysis by analysis, right? Because it is water under the bridge. Like I'm not gonna study it too much, but I am gonna look and say, you know, where am I at? But before we get too far down this road, I need to throw a huge shout out. He does not know we're doing this, but one of our most dedicated, loyal listeners, Chase Seibert.
Yeah.
Chase Seibert, congratulations. You and your wife, Caitlin, just had your first baby boy, Emerson Todd Seibert, born on the 28th of December. So in the town, we raise a glass to the Seiberts. Yeah. Congratulations, Chase. I'm so excited for you. Now the adventure begins, right? Now you realize what this life is really all about once you have that.
Well, that's a game changer for sure, man.
Game changer. So to the Seiberts, congratulations.
I love that. And you know, Mike, I think that I agree with your comments about turning into it, because I think that there's, you know, one of the things that we talk about a lot here on RMIT is this self-reflection, right? And self-analyzing. And I think that's important. I think, you know, not just on the things that we want to accomplish, but I think we got to be able to look at the weak parts, right? And say, hey, this is where I'm falling short, and whatever that may be. And then figure out what the goals that are going to be attached to that thing to help us get to a different place, right?
Yeah, you know, and shout out to our boy Stephen Lawson, right? Stephen's coming to us, Monk Manual World, episode 57. He joined us. He's put together a cool little package to you know, make 2022 a year of fuller living.
Yeah.
He has these questions, man. They're pretty powerful. But when you sit at the end of the year and as you're reflecting, you know, he asks about what distractions am I struggling with? I think that's right in our wheelhouse.
Yeah,
And he even says at the end of our lives, we're not going to look back on our efficiency, but rather the fullness we were able to realize on a daily basis. So if there are time sucks, if there are energy sucks, life drains from our life, man, we gotta identify those. We gotta remove those, because it is about fullness.
Yeah.
We ask our folks from time to time, guests come on, and we ask, what are you afraid of? I think that's a valuable question at this time of the year, right?
Yeah.
What am I afraid of? What's working? What am I excited about? What gives me hope? Do I have some bad habits?
Yeah.
Like on a scale of 1 to 10, what was the question? On a scale of 1 to 10, how much peace am I experiencing in my life?
Yeah. Right.
Right. Because that's if I can put my head down on my pillow every day and feel peace, I'm on to something, right?
Absolutely.
Now, I might be, according to John Madden, I might be on that in the sewer and
well, but I think
battling,
I think it's worth, Mike, posting on our website the link to this.
Yes, absolutely.
Manual piece, because it does ask questions that I think are rattling around in most of our listeners' minds, and rattling around in our minds, but it's put down in a format that you can look at. If I think the value of the new year and setting goals for the new year really is the reflection on the past year, right? And that document that Monk Manual
put celebrating.
Yeah, it really kind of outlines, like, what are we looking at? Where were you last year, and are you better this, now? I like that idea.
Because have you changed?
Yeah, it puts some meat on what these goals should be going into a new year, not just a desperation like, oh crap, I better chuck a Hail Mary because this was a bad year, right? We don't want to be in that spot. Although some, I've been there, but we want to be able to say, hey, in looking at what happened this last year, or where I was this last year, and where I've grown, or maybe where I haven't grown, these are the goals that I want to set.
Yeah, and I think we want to live responsive lives, right? Like, so we binged This Is Us. Kelly and I taking down the Christmas tree. We binged a couple of episodes of This Is Us to finish up the episode, because they're coming in. I think this next week they launched their last episode, and we love the Pearson family. I love that show. I'll include I'll include a link. I'll include a link in the show notes. But there's a scene where, that these are some interesting times to be a parent. And there's a scene where the parent was struggling with an issue that their kids were experiencing. And, we know we're only as happy as our least happy child. And she's consulting with her mom. And her mom says, yeah, you need to pivot, and you need to pivot as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking back now, and I'm wishing that I could have made some pivot changes sooner, because we lose the time.
Well, and there's some real power there on a lot of different levels. I think being able to, and this is one of the many reasons that I love RMIT and the opportunity that we have to have these conversations on a weekly basis, because there's a ton of wisdom from other people, right? Yeah. And I, I've got a lot of areas I want to improve on, and I can't figure this out on my own. But man, there's some people that have traveled roads that I haven't been on, and they can shed some light on some things in my own life, right?
Well, and you and we get off the phone with folks, or we jump off the show, and I know you pivot. There's been times where I'll come out from an episode recording, and I'll try to go make something right in my family because of something that was said.
Yeah. And I can't help but think, like, when I love that reference. I haven't seen the show This Is Us. I need to make that a goal to check it out. But I love that conversation they're having. It made me think, as you were talking about that, of Gus Koenig, and saying, hey, you want to know the list of the things for your
list,
right? Love your kids. That's the list.
Can we stop right now and just honor our guests?
Yeah.
So tonight, this is going to come out a little later, obviously, by the time our guests listen to it, but there's a post going out today across our social media platforms. And I've just kind of made a collage of this year's guests, of the show artwork from all of the different guests that we had on this year.
Yeah.
Putting it together, it moves me, man. It moves me. We have people from all different walks and talks of life. And I just love the relationships and the feelings that I have for these people. And I love how they've shared their life. And in doing so, they've poured into mine. And I'm a better person for it.
Yeah, it's funny, Mike. I had that thought when I saw that piece of artwork, that same thought. And one of the thoughts I had was, man, how lucky are we that these people have trusted us to have the conversations that they've had. But then as you're talking, I'm thinking, man, how lucky are the thousands of people that are listening to RMIT to have those same opportunities to have those conversations with those people. I mean, it's a big deal, man.
And here's the thing, like some of them honestly are strangers to me going into the process. And so I can only imagine as the host, how I feel. I'm imagining it's the same for our listeners.
Yeah.
Like, who cares if you've never actually sat down and broken bread with these folks?
Yeah.
Because of how authentically they showed up, the relationship is there. The power is there.
I totally agree. Love it. Well, we're lucky because we have Wes Franks joining us today for a little bit.
Shout out to episode 33, Sinister One. Featuring Wes Franks.
Yeah, that was good times.
And he might let us in. His life's a little different.
His life is a little different, and Wes is big on goal setting, right? Wes has got some lofty goals, and he's had some big changes in his life, and so we invited him on to come on and share some of his ideas about goals and goal setting and what works for him, and maybe we can all learn something together. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, as am I. So what do you say? Should we kick it in and let Wes join us?
Admitting him. Here we go.
I'm sure
you guys look good this morning. I thought about wearing a beanie to, for my bed hair, but I've realized that the less hair I have, I don't really have to worry about stuff like that.
I actually thought about throwing one on too, but you know what? No such luck. So.
Oh, we've done some vocal warm-ups, man. We are ready to roll, Wes. Ready to roll.
Well, perfect. Then I'll take your guys' lead.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump in. Obviously, we're going to start off the agenda, right, Wes? I mean, we got to connect with you. You came in. We are recording. We're currently recording episode 87 of The Richest Men in Town. This will be the inaugural episode of season 3 of our podcast. And you were with us in episode 33.
That is correct. 33.
So can you give us a little update? What does life look like? Any big changes since the last time we got together?
So new career path that transpired. I wasn't looking. It just presented itself. 2 additional grandchildren. And I mean, just besides just being a very blessed individual and trying to keep my head above water, those are probably the 2 most significant pieces.
Those are significant. I love that feeling. I love, as you're talking, I just feel the river, right? It's that river, and you're just enjoying the ride. So can you talk to me a little bit about where this career change fell in your lap?
Yeah, I'll summarize it in the 5 minutes because I think it's all in the story. I was speaking with, so as most people know, if they go back to 33, I had a stint of 7 years where I was laid off 3 times in that period. So employment, and whenever I received a new job, it was very important. I didn't really slack much, right? It was just working hard every day so that I didn't find myself in a position of trying to find a job for the next 4 to 5 months. So this last job, it was what I wanted. It was in skilled nursing. I was a sales rep. I love skilled nursing. One morning I was speaking with a person at the pharmacy who works in skilled nursing, and he had mentioned a thought about going back to school to become an administrator. And it was just like the light bulb just clicked as to, oh, I need to find out what administrators do. This sounds like everything that I've wanted. Why didn't this happen before? And one thing led to another. So here's how God works, right? And or whoever you believe in. That was on a, let's just call it a Wednesday. That Sunday I was at church. I was sitting in the congregation because we were all starting to gather and meet again. And I looked over to my right. That actually was my left, sorry. And there was an administrator sitting there that I did not even know was part of our congregation. And I told my wife, I said, look, I said, that's so-and-so. I said, he's an administrator of this building. And she goes, okay. That Wednesday, I was down in Yuba City. I was speaking to a director of nursing and asking her, who their owners were, so on and so forth. And she told me, I wasn't familiar with the company, but she said she had there were 2 facilities up in Redding. And one of them was, that administrator in our congregation was the administrator. And I thought, oh, so I called him up. He didn't know who I was, left him a message. We met on Friday. And we chit-chatted. Everything was great. He said he'd forward off my resume. That Saturday, this is where God really starts to show his hand. That Saturday, I recently purchased a Jeep. So I was getting gas and I had this prompting. I needed to go by and see a buddy of mine who I literally hadn't seen in 2 years. So I showed up at his house and we were chit-chatting, and he said, my neighbor has a Jeep also. Let me invite him over. So he came over and introduced himself, and my buddy goes, he works in skilled nursing. And I said, really? I said, what company? And lo and behold, it was the same company, right? And as we left, I came home and I told my wife, I said, listen, I said, I don't know what's going on right here. I said, but we probably need to buckle up, right? I said, because things are moving. And literally 3 weeks after that, I'd given my notice and I was hired. The administrator who was in our congregation, unbeknownst to me, was actually moving to South Carolina. So the company fill a position in Redding. And one of the big things about becoming an administrator through the training process is that once you're trained and licensed, the company gives you opportunities of facilities that are open, right? And you could move anywhere in the country. So when I was speaking to one of the owners, he asked me pretty much up front in the very beginning, are you looking to move out of Redding? And my answer was, listen, I said, this is probably the end of our conversation, but no. And he goes, perfect. He goes, that's what I wanted to hear.
So as I'm hearing that story, Wes, I'm thinking, I know this reference, the scriptural reference has come up before on the richest men in town, but Doctrine and Covenants, revelation given from the Lord to Joseph Smith, section 123, verse 17. Therefore, dearly beloved brethren, let us cheerfully do all things that lie in our power, and then may we stand still with the utmost assurance, see the salvation of God, for his arm to be revealed. Love that story, man. Love that. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
But that is not even why we brought you on the program.
No.
It is New Year's. It is New Year's Eve right now. By the time folks are listening to this, 2022 will be a couple of days old. We're interested in what does this time of year look like, feel like for one Wes Franks? Maybe we can learn some lessons from you.
Yeah. So I don't know, maybe I shared a little bit in episode 33. I can't recall about goal setting, right? I mean, goal setting has always been a big part of my life. I will say over the last 5 months since finding this opportunity or be given this opportunity, I mean, work and the mental time that goes into every day of 11-hour days is it's just crazy, absorbing all of everything that goes on inside of a skilled nursing facility. So my goals have really relaxed over the last, or at least me reviewing my goals, because I try to review them at least 5 days a week. During my pondering time, my scripture study, journaling. It's just something I start off with. And a couple of weeks ago, I thought I wasn't even going to set goals for this year. So I was like, I don't even know if I really want to do this. And then this week, it actually hit me pretty hard. I came across a couple quotes about becoming a disciple of Jesus Christ. And it was just like, how can I deny myself of not writing these down to focus and ponder on for, 2022. So that
can I stop you right there really quick?
Yes.
I dig the idea of that daily review, right? So whatever it is, whatever goals look like for our listeners and for ourselves, do we have a process or a routine or something to keep it in front of us and to keep it relevant?
Yeah.
Right. Because there's day-to-day bombardment, and we could easily find ourselves drifting off to some undesired location if we don't somehow find a way to keep our eye on that prize. Love that.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at least for me, the way I look at it, right, the difference, and we've all heard this, the difference between a dream and a goal is in the written words, right? You become what you think about. Ask and you shall receive. I mean, those things are thrown out all the time. I think Earl Nightingale was probably one of the first people in the 40s to come out with what he called the strangest secret. You can listen to it on YouTube. It's great, but it's basically stating that, you become what you think about all the time. He was a salesperson. He came across this, he put it out on a record because they didn't, that's what their technology was at that point in time. And he gave it to his salespeople, and he led to what we have now as like inspirational thinking, goal setting, and all of that. He kind of the whole Nightingale, Koenig record producing at that point in time, that whole piece. So listening to that, I've always been very intrigued with, wow, do I really have the power to become what I think about? I mean, is it truly that simple?
It's that whole James Allen, as a man thinketh, right? I mean, that's the process. Yeah. I love that. I mean, I believe that 100%. Yeah.
I'm even thinking of Julie Gephardt in the affirmation process. Right.
Yeah, I'm also thinking about Andrea Simmons and the power of manifestation. Right. I mean,
Yeah.
I think about Wes and the job, and I think that's the first thing that came to mind was that power of manifestation, right? When you want it and you put it out there and you work towards it, and then things start to fall in place.
But I do need to repent because I flippantly use that sometimes, that manifestation business. I'll come out and be like, okay, just want to manifest this. This is my desire. It is not just about naming your desire. It's actually
a little bit of work attached to that process, right?
Well, yeah. What's interesting is a couple months ago when the three of us had a text stream conversation, and what I go back to is also with Oliver Cowdery, right? And the gift and his desire to translate.
Right.
What was interesting about that whole conversation in the Doctrine and Covenants is, and I could turn to it real quick, but I'll just go from memory, is the fact that Oliver was given that gift, but he didn't pursue it, right? He would have been able to translate if he would have kept working towards it. But I think as the Revelation says, the time had passed and he was called to be a scribe. So I think that's what happens in goal setting often, is the fact of how bad do we want it, right? And is it in the Lord's timing? But the other part is what we have to do to achieve it. Right? Are we willing to be patient enough to learn and grow over time to become eligible and worthy to receive what it is we're asking for?
Yeah, and I think when we're talking about this, there's doing goals and there's being goals. Stephen Lawson, Monk Manual, he makes that reference, right? Like, we're not human doings, we're human beings. And I think that the important thing is, like, what do you want to be? And then what do the people that are those things, what do they do?
Well, right. Yeah, here's the irony of all that, though, is like, what do you want to be, and then what are you going to do to become? Yeah. Right?
We do to become, right? And I think even, Wes, you throw out that that lofty goal of becoming a disciple of Jesus Christ. And like, what does that look like? That is an amazing, I want to be this. And then you get into, okay, well, what does a disciple of Jesus Christ do? And that changes the reason why we're doing it, right? Because a lot of times, is prayer a box to check, or is prayer something that you do to become a disciple of Jesus Christ, right? Jesus Christ taught his disciples how to pray. I will follow his teachings and I will become like that. Or am I checking boxes, right?
But I think though that there is, so, and Mike, you and I have this conversation all the time about checking boxes, because I'm 100% with you on that. But part of me believes there's some importance to checking a box, right? Because there's a habit that has to be created somewhere, right? I mean, I want to get in shape. I don't like to do exercise, but I know that that's part of the process for me to get where I want to be, right? So I have to check that box, and eventually, hopefully, that becomes part of who I am, right? And I think that when we're setting goals, and I've been guilty of this, like I set this massive goal, right? And I said, this is what I want, and this is what I'm going for. And then however long into that process, I'm like, this is too much. Like, I can't get there. It's unattainable. But if we distill that down, and that's where I like what the Monk Manual really talks about, is you distill that down to these smaller steps, right?
Well, and then somewhere along the way, I know, Tyler, you've even shared conversations that you've had with people that maybe started something that they didn't love by the end, and it's that season is closed, and it's time for them to move on and do something else, maybe in church service, and you're having the conversation and you're telling them that season is over. There's tears.
Yeah.
Right. It's in the doing that our heart changes. It's in the doing. It's in the prayers. It's in the service. It's in the sacrifice that, like, this is drudgery right now, but give it time and give diligence. And somewhere in that process, magic happens and hearts change, and we do become in the doing, right?
Right. So what comes to my mind, and I think it's just a very clear conversation if we listen to Sister Corden's conference talk, right? As towards the end, when she was being called as the General Young Women's Presidency by the president of the church, right? He asks her, what is the number one thing the youth need to know? And she said they need to know who they are. And then he scoots his chair forward to her, so they're knee to knee, and he says yes. And he also said, and then they said, but they also need to know their purpose.
Yeah.
Right. So you need to know who you are, and you need to know your purpose. And if we're looking at a foundational piece of goal setting, I think that is at the core when you set your goals, because if you're setting goals to become a millionaire, right, for whatever reason, just because you want money, I mean, is that the real purpose? You know, what is the purpose as to if you set a goal to be a millionaire? I quit setting that goal to be a millionaire a long time ago because it just didn't have the purpose. The foundation to become a millionaire for me was not in the right realm of giving, or it was more of a selfish, hey, I just want this. I want this.
I like that, Wes. I think that the idea of identity has to be attached to that, right? And it's interesting because I think that if you had the goal, let's just say we have the goal of I want to be a millionaire. I think that some dissecting needs to take place of what the purpose of that goal is, right? I think, and that's with all of our goals, right? If I want to be better spiritually, what's the purpose of that, right? What's the outcome that's attached to that? I think if we look at that, we can really start to figure out what's the most meaningful goal and what are the most meaningful actions that we can take, right? I mean, we can start to delete the things that maybe become, this is about me receiving a promotion at work. Why? Right. What's attached to that? Is it because I want people to recognize me? Is it because I want to make more money so I can better support my family, right? There's good things and there's bad things attached to all those. But I think that dissection is an important part of it. And honestly, for me, I start out with like this list of things that I want to be my goals. And I delete a lot of those things. As I start to go through, I'm like, no, that's not, I don't need it. That's not, if I do this one's attached to that, right? It's that process of just figuring out, for me, distilling that list down to saying, okay, these things are the things that are going to get me where I want to be and who I want to be, you know? But yeah, I love that idea of identity attached to it.
So it's what I enjoy is going back to your goals that you set like 15 years ago, you know, and pulling those out and laughing, right, at what was important at that point in time. So my goals 15 years ago, probably 20 years ago, as a matter of fact, was, you know, going to spend a week in Florida at the Daytona 500, right? And to be able to literally go to 7 key NASCAR races and, you know, to own a Nova, which, you know, we all know that did happen, right? And to own a specific truck, which did happen. And so there are things that I think over time, if you write them down, they will transpire. But then there's also things that you look back on and you go, wow, that was so silly, because in the moment, yeah, the Daytona 500, spending a week there was really important to me. Right now, I quit watching NASCAR about 5 years ago, you know? I mean, so I mean,
some of those things aren't bad, right? I mean, we can have those things as targets that we want to aim for. But yeah, I agree with you. I just love the idea. I think for me, as I've gotten older and, you know, and been around more wise people, I won't say I've become wiser, but I've been around more wise people. I've realized that what I want to put down on paper are the things that are going to change me into the person that I want to be, right? And it has, you know, it's funny because so little of that nowadays has anything to do with possessions or status or really anything that anyone else is looking at. It's all about, you know, where am I at with the relationships that are important to me, and where do I want to be at with those relationships? And that's everything from spiritual to the people that live, you know, in the same house as me.
All right. So I'm reading The Happiness Equation by Neil Pasricha. So I just want to share this account, getting into the why you have the goal, right? Because I don't think there's anything more discouraging than getting to a place where you have your desired goal in your hand and you realize
it's not paying off like you wanted it to.
It doesn't satisfy, right? The thing that you wanted and the thing that you've spent life energy that is now gone, you can't get the time back. And now you're holding the desired thing and it's not delivering what you wanted it to deliver. He tells a story of we're in a tiny fisherman's village, right, in Mexico. Tourist comes up to a fisherman and buying some fish. And he's like, man, how many boats you got? He's like, I got one boat. I go out, I catch for my family. I catch to sell. And then I spend time, have a siesta, go out and have some fun in the evening with my friends and my family. Life is good. And the tourist is like, no. Like I've got a business background. We can get you a fleet of boats. You can do this, right? You can become a fishing company down here, tour guides. You can package and process fish. He's like, why would I do that? He's like, well, then you could be in a place where you could retire and then you can spend time with your family and friends. And he's like, right? Like I'm doing that right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm living, I have those elements in my life right now. I don't need to scale up these things that are going to take away my life only to deliver what was available to me right here, right now. I mean, so I really think it is important to realize what does a full life look like, right? And then making sure that every day we're about that work.
And I feel like too, like sometimes when we set those goals or we look at those things that we desire, maybe some of that process of analyzing that is what are the sacrifices that have to be made?
Trade-offs.
Right? What are the trade-offs and what am I going to lose in this process? You know, I think a lot of times we set the goal and the idea immediately is, for me, what am I going to gain from this process, right? You know, but maybe looking at what could be lost in that process, because, you know, I think part of that too is I love that story, Mike, because I think, you know, being aware of what blessings you have right now. That's so important. I think that sometimes this whole the New Year's resolution is, gosh, I want things to be so much better than they are now. And we lose sight of how great are things now. It's that whole George Bailey thing, right? Like, man, if I had this, and this, my life would be perfect. But we neglect the act of looking back and going, look at all this that I have right now. This is pretty amazing.
Well, so, where Wes talks about looking back on previous goals, I think the only competition is with our former self.
And it's that.
Right? Am I better?
It's that beautiful Hemingway quote. That you posted the other day.
You know, it's not about raising myself above others. It's like raising above former versions of me. Yeah. You know, Tyler, at the end of the last episode, I think we threw out there just, man, how great would it be? How great would it be? You know, Wes, you've been there, and Tyler, you've had kids, you've had Sydney come home from a mission. Like, how great would it be for Grace to come home in August and for her to see me different, better? You know, that's it. Yeah, that's what I'm chasing. That's what I want.
Or involved in the process. You know, I just think that, that idea of the process of change is huge. But
so there's also another quick little read. Matter of fact, the book is, you could probably finish it in 30 minutes, called Acres of Diamonds. Right. And it talks about, there's 3 stories in there: Sutter's Mill, and then there's a diamond mine that was the richest diamond mine. But the gist of it is, there was a gentleman, and he had this massive amount of property, and he wanted to find diamonds, and he wanted to become the very wealthy person. So he sold his property and he traveled the world looking and investing in trying to find diamonds. He actually died a very impoverished man, lonely man in this little village somewhere. The person who bought his property was walking one of the acres of it one day and came across this stream and found this black rock and put it up on his mantle, and had a friend come over not too far after that and said, "Where did you find that?" And he cracked it open, and there was a diamond inside of it. And it's actually the largest diamond mine that was ever discovered. So it goes back to being content with what you have, because everything you have and everything you need is really right here. It's just changing that perspective.
Man, that one burns, right? Sell it all. Come on, man. I was sitting on that thing.
Yeah.
So, but that is George Bailey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? George Bailey is sitting on a diamond mine, and he doesn't realize it until he has his experience. And
I think that maybe that's the process. Part of the process of goal setting, right, is to look at where you're at now, and because I think, again, and I just think about years of setting goals for myself. It's always been about, where am I going to get to? Right. What's the next place I need to get to? And maybe we need to be better about just looking right here. Like, what are we sitting on right now? Maybe we're sitting on a diamond mine, and we have to water where we're at. Right. And we have to tighten that circle a little bit better, and I'm a believer in that for myself. Like I said, my goals have become less far reaching and more around the place that I currently stand.
So Tyler, you just mentioned, look where we're at, right? Because depending on your faith, and this goes back to even your self-worth, right? We are all promised that we're predestined to greatness, right? And I think that if we look around, how many people in this world understand that they are predestined to be great, right? Going back to, do people really understand their purpose? Do people understand who they are? So I know we're getting a little bit off of goal setting, but I still think that you had mentioned your goals a lot right now. And I'm actually looking through my goals. There are very little worldly possessions in my goals, and they are so much focused on being a better husband, a father, listening more, a lot of things on becoming and learning to become like Jesus Christ, or what I need to do to change to become a better person passionately. So it's interesting that you say, look where we are at, because I truly believe we need to be content and to be patient. Patience is a big one.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's funny because you talked about, you shared your story of your change in employment and seeing the hand of God involved in that. And I think that sometimes we're looking so far down the road to say, when I get to that place, then I'll see these things.
Right.
And the reality is, like you said, if we look right here, the evidence is everywhere, right? That he's involved. And I think that's a powerful, it's just important, right? We need to be, and I agree with you 100%, Wes. I think that the idea of identity changes everything.
Right.
It changes everything. If we really, if that is a core belief, a core understanding of who we are, then it shifts how we think about everything. It shifts our goals. It shifts our relationships. Everything changes based on that one fact of identity.
So have you guys read the book Driven? It's the autobiography of Larry Miller.
I have not.
Okay. So you had also mentioned, and I think David O. McKay talks about this from the scripture reference of seek ye first the kingdom of God, right? Because we can accomplish anything we set our minds to. It's just, as you said, back to the purpose. So Larry Miller ended up being an amazing philanthropist, giving back. But when you read towards the end of his autobiography, after owning all of his dealerships, after owning the Utah Jazz and everything that he had done, towards the end, it talks about a young grandchild that they adopted and took care of. And as his health started to decline because of all of his hours that he spent abusing his body, not with outside influences like, alcohol or stuff, but just abusing it because he worked so long, didn't eat healthy. He had the experience to raise his grandchild, and they kind of adopted him. And as the child was going through different stages of his life, like 2 to 5, he found so much joy and excitement in experiencing this that his wife referenced, what he had missed raising his own children, because he was so busy and so focused on building this massive, enterprise with car dealerships and owning the Jazz and just everything else he accomplished, that he had a brief moment before his passing of realizing a lot of the sacrifices that he missed out on, but it came through the grandchild. So,
and that's the trade-offs.
Yes.
Right? And I think that, really, as we think about this process of becoming better, as we think about change, as we even tie it into our discipleship, we do have, in my mind, with the Christmas season, we recently, as a family, we read Luke 2. And Luke 2 ends, verse 52, kind of with a nugget, right? A model. And Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. And the idea of balanced development, right? Like Larry Miller's example of maybe sacrificing some things to develop other things. Is there a way that we can develop exactly? Right? Talk to me, Tyler. Talk to me, Stake Young Men's president.
No, that's inspired, right? And I agree with you 100%. I think there's balance. We have to strike that balance. And if we look at the current youth program for the church, and it talks about goal setting, and it breaks it into those 4 quadrants of spiritual, social, physical, and intellectual goals, right? I think that's super powerful. You find that same setup in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, right? That Covey talks about, that exact same layout, finding that balance. But I think those things are all interconnected, right? You can't find yourself in a place of success by ignoring one or more of those quadrants, right? You've got to be thinking about learning, your intellectual goals. You've got to be thinking about your spiritual goals, your relationship with God. You got to be thinking about your health. Your mind and your body are attached, right? You can't separate those 2 things. And then of course, relationships. We talk about this all the time on Richest Man in Town. In fact, Wes, before you came on, Mike and I were sort of, we were sort of just be basking in the joy of richest in town and saying, how great is it that we get to talk to all these different people that have traveled roads that we haven't traveled, that can say, hey, Tyler, maybe you don't want to do this thing because I've been there and it's not a good thing. Or, hey, Tyler, maybe you do want to start doing this thing because it's brought me great success. I mean, that's a powerful thing. And I think that we gain those insights through fostering and nurturing relationships, right? So having that as part of the goal, I think is a powerful thing. And that's speaking of manifesting, that's manifested itself in many ways over the past 87 episodes, right? There's people that I haven't known before, and now I'm like, holy cow, if I didn't have that conversation with Wes in episode 33, there's things that would be totally different about my life today. So that's
I think as I hear this though, and in the context of a church youth program, yeah. And whether people are in a church or out of a church, I think that makes sense in that development. And from a parent perspective, I will tell you, watch your step, right? I think of Jeffrey R. Holland right now, watch your step, because parents who live out of balance have kids who are watching and learning about living out of balance.
Yeah.
Right. And so if family is being sacrificed to make a buck,
yeah,
your children are learning making a buck is more important than family.
Yeah.
And they're amplifying it times 10 in their own life. Right.
Yeah. It's interesting, man. There's so much balance that is attached to all that, right? Because you got to make a living. You want to be successful at your job. You want to, and there's just a lot of balance there.
But from the Lord's perspective, it isn't about what you did. It's about how you did it.
Yeah.
And what did you become in the process of doing?
Yeah.
That's vocation from the Lord's perspective.
Yeah. And I'm a believer that balance has to be struck everywhere, right? Because you could be the guy that sits at home and reads the scriptures 24/7 and doesn't do the other things.
Yeah.
That's not good, right? You're neglecting other areas of your life that have to grow, or other people in your life. And so I'm going to tell you, as we're having this conversation, the goal that I want to set, one of the goals for this new year, is to remember. Because I think that in hearing you talk, Wes, about identity, that to me, like that's sort of a linchpin in all of this, right? Like, I want to remember who I am. I want to remember what the potential I have is. I want to remember where the blessings have come from before. I want to remember how to repeat the things that have brought me success, right, in the past, and expound on those. So that's going to be one of my.
Okay, here's my one.
All right.
So, and this is a deep. We're gonna tread lightly here, because we could be celebrating New Year's Eve together if we don't get off of this, right? But John chapter 15 verse 5, 2022. So Jesus Christ teaches in John 15:5, I am the vine, ye are the branches. He that abideth in me and I in him, the same bringeth forth much fruit. For without me, you can do nothing. I want to take a deep dive personally into what it means to abide in him. And as I abide in him, the promise and the assurance that he abides in me. So, and I love the idea of bringing forth much fruit. And I've actually, I think, Tyler, you threw out that, watering where I'm at, taking care of where I'm at and what I have. And I think that so much of this process is going to be about what basic conditions have to be present for me to be fruitful in the different roles and responsibilities of my life. And can I take care of those basics, right? And where I'm lacking, can I amend, right? Can I grow the good? Can I be on the lookout for things that are going to be destructive? And can I just abide? I love the idea of abiding. Songs come to mind, scriptures come to mind, references come to mind. right? Eating at the family dinner table, and am I feasting with the Lord, or am I hitting a drive-through, right?
And it makes me think too. It's like, I love that, Mike. I want to dive into that as well. I think that's a great thought. It also brings to mind this idea of stewardship, right? And accountability. As you're talking about that, I'm like, gosh, am I being a good steward over the things that I have responsibility for? And am I being accountable in the way that I should be?
And that's a powerful list to make.
Yeah.
Listeners out there, I don't care your walk. I don't care your talk. If you're listening to this episode, sit down with a napkin, a scrap of paper, and just write down the realms of responsibility you have.
Yeah.
Right. With those roles. And it's it's a pretty short list. And then you ask yourself, how does your garden look in each of those?
Yeah.
To carry that analogy out a little bit.
Yeah, I love it.
So since you guys had the opportunity to share your one goal,
yeah,
right?
Left you the best for last.
Okay. So it's actually a quote, and I've had this quote and I've read it over and over many times, but as I came across it this last week, it was like, these points need to be listed out. So it's Elder L. Tom Perry. A disciple of Jesus Christ is one who's learning to be like Christ, learning to think, to feel, and to act as he does. To be a true disciple, to fulfill that learning task, is the most demanding regimen known to man. No other discipline compares in either requirement or reward. It involves the total transformation of a person from the state of the natural man to that of a saint, one who loves and serves with all of his heart, might, mind, and strength. The Savior instructed those that would follow him about the essence of discipleship when he said, "If any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." And now, for a man to take up his cross is to deny himself of all ungodliness and every worldly lust and keep my commandments. So when I started to write my goals this week, right, because I always write my goals in all present tense, right? So this is kind of what I took from that, and I listed it underneath one of my spiritual columns. So to
hold on. Present tense, like you're there.
Yes.
Like you're standing in the. Okay, love that.
Versus I want to be, I am. So it goes, I have learned to be like Christ. I have learned to think like Christ. I have learned to feel and act as Jesus Christ. I have transformed from a state of the natural man into that of a saint. I have served with all my heart, might, mind, and strength. I have denied myself of all ungodliness and every worldly lust. I have kept the commandments of God. So my focus, I thought I was, and I shared this with you guys earlier this week, right? That I was going to take one of these and I was going to focus on it for a week. After picking one and realizing that, if I was to pick that one for the rest of this week into next week, and as I've pondered on it and reflected on my performance the week or the day before, I need at least a month to focus on one of these aspects. The one I chose first, which happens to be probably one of the harder ones, is I have learned to feel and act as Jesus Christ. So of course, it'll be written down on my 3x5 card, and it will be read over and over every day, because as I look back on yesterday, there were points and times that if I would have been a little bit more aware of what my goal was, that not that anything bad happened, but I probably would have been a little bit more in tune, because when we think about feeling like Jesus Christ and acting like he does, first of all, I said as I was pondering on and praying this morning, I thought, how in the heck can I even ask for this, right? How can I even accomplish this? But it's a goal, so we're going to move forward with it.
I love it.
Well, I love it. So Lee Cockrell says the first thing to do every day is fix yesterday.
Yeah.
So the thinking is the very first step that you and Tyler and myself, in that discipleship, is repent for falling short. Right?
Do you have that Hemingway quote in front of you?
Oh, I will. I can pull it up.
I think, I love the conversation that we've had this morning, and I love the goals that you guys have. I think they're exciting. You know, the next step, Wes, and you mentioned this to us in a text conversation we were having a few days ago about accountability, right?
Right.
That's the piece that maybe is missing sometimes in goal setting, is that accountability part of it. And so
Ernest Hemingway.
Yeah, go for it.
There's nothing noble in being superior to your fellow man. True nobility is being superior to your former self.
Yeah, I love that. I love that quote. So here we go, right? We're moving into 2022. It's a new chapter is opening, and we've talked about some of the things that we are going to focus on. The component that the three of us have talked about privately is accountability and holding each other accountable to these goals. And maybe we can talk about how we can do that in the town as well, and help some of our other listeners find accountability there as well. But I want to look at 2022 with that same thought of Hemingway. How can I be better than my former self, and be committed to that? So I appreciate you guys.
Beat yesterday.
Yeah, beat yesterday, man. That's it, man. That's it. I love it. So it's been fun. I appreciate the conversation and where we're at, and Wes, we appreciate you for coming on with us. It's been too long. We love having you here, man.
Hey, and vulnerability is the cornerstone of friendship, Wes. So thank you for letting us in on your goals and your process.
I appreciate it. I love you guys. This is everything's about timing. Threw out a text, boom, this led to this. I hope that the listeners are able to, take in some of the keys that were shared today, and to be able to write things down that will change their lives moving forward.
So Wes, about 87 times Tyler and I have said, man, let's do something with this. Right? Let's do something with this. So boys, keep going, right? Keep going.
All right, guys. Talk to you later.
Yes, we appreciate you.
Happy New Year.
Yes, Happy New Year.
Good idea, Ernie. A toast to my big brother George, the richest man in town.